two things that I noted. First of all, there's this, again, we have this idea of salvation is related to preparation. So just like when we were talking about the marriage and the person coming in there being unprepared, like when he was not dressed properly. And now here we have this idea of the oil, right? So again, it's related to you being saved is related to you being prepared to be saved, right? And what this preparation involves, right, is the basis of um, a lot of debate and discussion about works versus faith and this idea of soteriology, right? How we're to become saved. But it's interesting to me that it's always related to an actual action, right? Like a preparing yourself. So it seems to me like this involves in some ways some sort of works, right? So that's how I would read it as. It's not just about having faith, but it also involves about preparing yourself in a certain way, like being dressed properly when you go into the wedding, or bringing what's needed at the time, right?
The parable of the 10 bridesmaids. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like this: 10 young women took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, "Look, here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those young women got up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." But when they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. And those who were ready went with him into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the other young woman came, also saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, and therefore you know neither the day nor the hour." The parable of the talents. For it is as if a man, going on a journey, summoned his slaves and entrusted property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. At once the one who had received the 5 talents went off and traded with them, and made 5 more talents. In the same way the one who had the 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, "Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents." His master said to him, "Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master." As the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, "Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents." His master said to him, "Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master." Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, reaping what you did not sow, and gathering what you did not scatter. So I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours." But his master replied, "You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow, and gather what I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and those who have in abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be gnashing of teeth." The judgment of the nations. When the Son of Man comes into the glory, and all the angels with him, Then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will from one from a separate people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those at the right hand, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. And I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me, and I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick and in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me." Then he will say to those at his left hand, "You who are cursed, depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will also answer me, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into the eternal fire. I see, I see. So this is a lot like the, don't try to predict when it's going to happen, and only do it when you think it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's about always being prepared, right?
Because these foolish women, they don't take oil with them, and they don't think about it.
Right, and then when he does come, they are willing to go with him, but the problem is they're not prepared to go with him. Right? Because it's not like they don't want to, right? They desperately want to go, but the problem is they've been neglecting their duties, right? And again, it's like neglecting their duties towards what? Well, we see that at the end when they show up and he says, "I don't know you." Right? So they're neglecting their duties to know God, right? To know the divine. That's what's being neglected by them. Right. So he actually goes a little bit out of the story here at the end because at first it's about the oil and the candles and all that, and then when he gets to the end, he says like, "No, the actual problem is like you don't know him. That's the problem."
Right.
So what is the? So here he's going out of the parable because obviously, in the parable, the other 5 women would also not know him because they just met him. But obviously, the idea is that the preparation is getting to know him, right, in the real world. So that's what I think is interesting here, that it does involve something like where you need to be prepared. It's not just about when he comes, you're like, "Oh yes, I want to go." It's like, well, yes, but if you really, put it into it, you would have prepared yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. Also, just side note, outside of the theological stuff, I think this is good advice generally in life. It's like if you only do, put forward your best work or try at something when you think it's gonna count.
Yeah.
Usually, I find that it ends up happening that the thing that you need to be prepared for, or the thing that you should care about, you're like actually not prepared for when it happens. But if you always prepare yourself, then like even if you think that nobody's watching or nobody cares, in reality somebody is noticing and like treats you better because of it. Just something I've noticed. Something that my dad always says. It's like you never know who's paying attention, who's in the room. Always like,
put your best
foot forward in all circumstances, because you never know who's paying attention, who's noticing you, who's in the room, who could, help you down the line.
So basically, always prepare like it's the last time you're gonna prepare, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the last judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say a lot of these parables can be read without the theological idea. Um, but it's obviously there.
Yeah. I mean, I had a teacher in high school who he was profound atheist, but he was like a huge Jesus fan.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was like the way he was reading it was what Jesus was doing was he was teaching us how to live.
Yeah.
You know, he was teaching us, giving us the keys for how to live, um, you know, a better life, to live the best life. But all of the like he was complete atheist and thought that when we die, nothing, it's just the end and there is no God. Um, but it was yeah, he like basically took all of the gospels and was like lived by it and super into it, but none of the theological stuff.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of people do obviously say that Jesus is like a good moral teacher, and you could look at him as someone like the Buddha, right? Someone who is um, like a philosopher of ethics, if we said it like a modern day kind of description.
Yeah.
But I think the key takeaway from the theology side is that for him it's not enough, right? So he's saying that you need to believe, as we said with the commandments, right? So you need to believe in what he's saying. You need to believe in this reality, this metaphysical reality that he's describing, because for him that's the basis for what he is saying. And without it, he's saying that wouldn't be the same, right?
Yeah.
You could say it, but the words would not be as full as they are now. Um, and this also goes to like C.S. Lewis's famous uh, trilemma, where he says you only have three options if you actually analyze the historical Jesus Christ, right? You can either say that he was a good moral teacher and he was saying true theological things, so he was actually divine and like all this. Obviously, there's a debate about interpretation, but if we agree on that's the interpretation, then you either go with that side, which is obviously the religious side, or you're going to have to say that he wasn't a good teacher or that he was a bad person, right?
Yeah.
Because he would have been lying when he was saying all these things. So actually, it would be very strange because he would be like the Buddha, but with a bunch of lies connected to him, right? Where he didn't need to say those things.
Yeah.
He could have just given his moral opinions on things.
By the way, I think now thinking about it more, I think these two next like the parable of the tenants and the judgment of nations,
Yes.
is basically saying the same thing. Because I think that the talents is like, but the problem with the last guy is he's thinking that the master is gonna get mad at him. Right? He says something. Uh, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping what you did not sow, and gathering what you did not scatter. So I was afraid and went and hid your talents in the ground.
Right, and again we have this idea of not preparing, right? He's not doing anything with it. He's just sitting idly by, waiting
Right.
for the return, whilst the others are actually doing something with their life, right?
Right.
Before he gets there.
And then the judgment of nations. Um, right. He says, "Oh, the people are like." In response to him saying, I was hungry and you did not give me food. I was thirsty and you did not give me
Yep. Yep.
drink. They're like, oh, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean we didn't do this? And he's like, yeah, but you didn't do it to the least of the people, right?
Yeah, you're right. And it's exactly the same thing where the problem is they don't know him.
Right,
So again, it's like, and you see that because they question it. They're like, well, how didn't we help you? Because again, it's like waiting for I'll be good on that day where it
right.
matters.
They're
But
like,
it's like, but every day matters.
of course, if you come, then we'll give you food. And it's like, no,
Right, right.
but you, you didn't do it in all of these instances. So you didn't actually do it.
And the exact same thing happens with the story of the of the previous story there where he says that you don't know me, like,
Yeah,
or he says if you knew all these things then you would know to behave properly, but you didn't behave properly, right?
right.
So you actually didn't know, you did not know what was expected of you. That's the basic message here.
Hmm.